I think about Five Nights at Freddy's a lot. I didn't know if that was clear enough, so I had to say it out loud. I've played every Five Nights at Freddy's game out there. Yeah, I've been to the Pizzeria, I've visited the sister location, and you bet your Fazballs I've been to the Pizzaplex. Before and after the bombing of 29 that caused the Ruin DLC. A lot of people don't know about that. I've even played FNAF World.
Be sure to always search for new chips and bite.
That's right, I've swung them all. All the ones that matter, at least.
I mean, we have to, oh wait, Chica, looking good.
By far, the least enjoyable of these endeavors was becoming
a Fazbear Entertainment franchisee.
This may or may not have to do with the fact that this is one of the few games in the franchise that does not include obtrusive yet insistent beak thrusting as a feature.
I saw a beak thrusting at me from the darkness.
And it's a given, being a FNAF tuber, self-proclaimed, that this game takes up a pretty hefty amount of my brain power. And I don't want anybody underestimating how much I truly mean that. To really put it in perspective for you, let me give you a fun little fact about myself. If I were to go into the history of my brain and see what the last day of my life was that I didn't think about Five Nights at Freddy's at least once, that day would probably be the day before I first watched Markiplier's first video on the first game, which would also be early August of 2014. That's right, ever since I was a wee, innocent, vulnerable little boy that sat down and decided to watch Markiplier play a video game about scary animatronics, there has not been a single day that has not had at least a little bit of influence of the Fazbear. And one would think that when somebody spends so much time thinking about one single thing for the majority of their life, that must mean that they like that thing, right?
Oh, sugar. You're in for a rude awakening.
If anything, the amount of time that I've spent thinking about this game has made the flaws far more prevalent. And just like any other FNAF fan out there, I have some strong opinions on the games. However, some of mine might have me end up at the sharp end of a pitchfork. Oh, don't poke me too hard with that thing now. Oh, you're scaring me. Segue back to Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator. Also known as Five Nights at Freddy's 6, Pizza Sim is one of the least offensive games to fans. Some people in the franchise might have strong opinions on games like Sister Location, which I think is fair. I don't think the game is bad by any means, but just okay. I mean, the visuals are a nice change from the rest of the franchise up to this point, and I'd say the same for the gameplay, but it's not perfect. There's definitely some flaws, so I get it. And on the other hand, there are some people that hate FNAF World, and those people are children.
I love FNAF World.
And some very, very specific types of people actually hate Help Wanted. And even though this opinion goes against my moral code, I can find the strength in me to sit down and have civilized conversations with these people without truly showing how actually disgusted I am by their existence. And then there's Pizza Sim. It's kind of the love it or it of the franchise. There's really no strong feelings against the game shown in the community. And that's where I come in. The epitome of who even is this guy and why should I care about what he has to say? Who is it? Well, you want credibility, huh? All right, no problem. Just take a look at this clip right here and try and convince me that I'm not objectively right about most things.
Well, hello.
That was the wrong clip. Now that I've cleared my name, I think we can move on.
Whoa, hold it right there. What is a cute boy like you doing wearing those dingy and icky clothes? For legal reasons, I would like you to keep them on for now, but allow me to make a suggestion. Let me pique your interest. Have you ever felt emotion? Yeah, just about everybody? Okay, great. How about this emotion? Still just about everybody. Perfect. So why don't you express yourself more with your clothing? Go ahead and go to the description down below to pick up one of these babies. That's right, Screaming merch available now. I'm a sellout. And hey, don't leave. I see you trying to skip forward into the video. Don't do that because I have an offer for you. If you go ahead and use the discount code SCREAMING10 at at the checkout, well, guess what happens if you do that? Yeah, just get a little closer. You get 10% off your order. I'm just saying. But be quick, because this deal only lasts for the next 30 days as of the upload of this video today. as of this date right here. That's quite the steal if I say so myself, but not literally though. Don't steal, okay? I can't promote that, okay? I'm gonna let you off with a warning this time, but don't let it happen again.
First, let's start with the story. Probably the best part of this game and kind of the best story of any of the games in the franchise. Look, I'm claiming that this game's potentially the worst in the franchise, but not necessarily that it's just bad all around. And in fact, this game contains some story beats that are actually pretty impressive regarding the scale of it all. I'm gonna go ahead and say that never once in this franchise has the game been more emotionally impactful as well as satisfying as the Connection Terminated ending has been. Every single time I hear this monologue, it sends shivers down my spine for real. This just feels like the perfect climax to a story that's been going on for a handful of years, being wrapped up with every single bow in the most dramatic and impactful and satisfying way possible. And then there were more games after that, but we're not talking about that right now. Part of me really wanted to blame this game for Security Breach's horrible Afton ending reveal, that, you know, FNAF 6 was under the Pizzaplex and this, you know, the souls are alive? I still don't know. But that wouldn't really be fair. I mean, FNAF 6's story was diminished by Security Breach, not the other way around. Now, I could say a million more things about the Connection Terminated ending, but it wouldn't be anything that you probably haven't heard before, so I'm just gonna move on. My light died. Okay. There are some pretty powerful moments of storytelling that are hidden in the Tycoon section minigames as well. These in particular don't really have an impact on FNAF 6's story, but FNAF's story as a whole. And obviously this is okay. I mean, every FNAF game up to this point has kind of done the same thing. But even then, regarding the story of FNAF 6 alone, it's still a pretty clear progression of events that leads to a climactic moment that's satisfying as hell. You spend your work week gathering all the animatronics into one place, and consequentially, gathering all of the remaining souls that are hopelessly awaiting some sort of freedom. Well, all of them but one, but we don't like that one, so it's fine. And on the topic of Springtrap, or Scrap Trap, which is equally as bad a name as his design is, he doesn't even seem to want to be set free, and this is made very clear with his catchphrase, "I always eventually return." Wait, that's not right. William Afton, the child unaliver that has been the main antagonist for this entire game franchise, is trapped inside of this maze of lies and ultimately burned to death alongside his innocent victims whose souls are being set free. The irony here being that the flames here are providing the innocent souls with a sense of freedom that they've been waiting for so long, and on the other hand, provide Afton with the slow, painful demise that he's oh so deserving of. Or at least we thought. Or maybe it is. But maybe not. I'm not really sure anymore. Anyway, there isn't much else to talk about regarding the story of this game. I mean, it's a pretty sizable story for a classic era FNAF game, so it gets some brownie points in that aspect from me. Now, with that over with, I can finally be toxic online for the sake of engagement. All aboard! The first stop on our toxic gossip train is the criticism character design station. That worked out better in my head. One could argue that criticizing the character designs of a game is a pretty petty and pointless thing to do, especially when there's so much else to talk about when it comes to video games like this, but these criticisms have plagued my mind for about 6 years now, so I'm gonna insert them. This is my therapy. How do you cope? Personally, I do it online, in front of other people. So, and you can't judge that. Now we're gonna ease nicely into the criticisms here. Kind of a little bit of like a hate edging, if you will. Starting with Lefty, probably the least offensive design of this game and my personal favorite. It's not only visually well made, but the design itself has a practical use that contributes to the story in a pretty rad way. And if somehow you don't know what I'm talking about when I say that, I'm gonna go ahead and have my good friend RandomStuffGaming give you a FNAF lore breakdown. Hey, that's not my name! I mean, look, I'm literally just you. That is absolutely not my problem. And also, it's what the script says, so I can't do anything about it. And didn't you write the script? Oh, sorry, I can't hear you. I'm listening to music right now. That's where I wanna be. I'm a RandomStuffGaming clone, but even though I'm just a clone, I'm a very big part of today's video. Sorry, why does it just say poopy, comma, fat? Oh, right. I couldn't figure out how to fit those words into the script naturally. Why would you need to do that? Well, no reason in particular. Look, just keep going. You're doing a great job. Well, okay, there's no way that I'm reading that. I figured as much, but that's fine, because I edit these videos anyway, so why don't you go ahead and read that line? I'm not gonna read that. I'm a big, fat, poopy butt. Okay, just forget the script, just give me the breakdown. Okay, so it's all theorized to start all the way back in the early 70s with the opening of Fazbear's family. Okay, stop. A little more brief, please. I just need the description of Lefty. Oh, right. Sorry. Okay. In Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator, Lefty is actually an acronym that stands for Lure, Encapsulate, Fuse, Transport, Extract. The Y is silent, I guess. Now, Lefty wasn't just another animatronic. She was created with a purpose in mind, and that purpose being to encapsulate one of the remaining animatronics that contains one of the souls yet to be set free. The marionette, also known as Charlie Emily, the apparent first victim of William Afton, as well as the daughter of Henry Emily, the business partner of William Afton, as well as the creator of Lefty. Are we following? Okay, good. As you may have gathered already, Henry wants to gather all of the remaining souls into one place in order to set them free.
Don't forget Saturday. You want them all to be in one place.
And of course, Henry would want one of the souls to be his own daughter, so she can finally rest. Alright, thanks, other me. Wait, I could keep going. I mean, I haven't even touched on how flawed the design is for this thing. Henry makes a red and black bear animatronic to lure his daughter, who died outside of a restaurant that's mascot was a bear animatronic. Huh? What genius he is. I mean, he could have at least made the bear green, because green is Charlie's color after all. Yeah, I think we're good. Thanks, though. I'll tell you what, you're living up to the RandomStuffGaming title real well. As I was saying, yes, Lefty's design is very basic, but I think that's what makes it so effective. I'm also keen for a good black and red color pairing. It just kind of makes my eyes happy. And lest we forget the subtle yet cool detail of the puppet's limbs being barely visible in some of these Lefty shots, it's just a really cool way of adding a new character to these games and actually giving it a purpose besides just, oh look, new character, more merch. But like I've stated earlier, I'm not here to be praising the game. Not for too long, anyway, because then people will start clicking off. So I think we should get this train a-rolling. All right, next stop, Scrap Baby. Choo-choo. This is a stupid bit. It's a fairly inoffensive design with some cool and questionable details. Like, where'd she get these roller skates? Don't get me wrong, it's fucking cool. They're cool, but I just want to know where she got them. And also, before I get too far into it, I think it's important that we get into Scrap Baby's importance to the story. So take it away, Right. Okay, okay, yeah, I got it. Yeah, I got it, okay. Basically, Scrap Baby and Molten Freddy used to be one animatronic known as Ennard, but they have since split due to, infidelity or something. So the fact that these two full-sized animatronics used to be combined as one tells me that either Ennard was huge and DeviantArt leads me to believe that's the truth, or that Scrap Baby
was a very tiny.
And I just don't think that's the case. Is that a design flaw I see, huh? Is it, Scott? I don't know what else it could be. I mean, where did this claw come from? I didn't see that in Ennard. That wasn't there. Maybe he keistered it. No, but Ennard doesn't have it. Well. Scrap Baby mid out of 10 next. Now, by far, the most hated character in this game, at least design-wise, is Scraptrap. With his main crime being his uncanny resemblance to a peanut, it's definitely a huge step down from the peak design he once was, Springtrap. I understand that the character has been through many years of natural decay as well as being actually burnt alive, but you can't convince me that these are the same character. If I knew nothing about this game and you just showed me these two characters, I'd be like, maybe they're cousins at best, and by the looks of things, cousins with benefits, but we're not gonna go into that. Just look at this side by side and try to find some similarities here besides the color palettes. And even then, the color palettes are kind of different. Tell me, no, seriously, genuinely tell me how fire damage changed his entire face structure from one game to another. And by the way, the little black part on his nose, where did that come from? That just shows up in the 6th game. Somehow his teeth got whiter over time also, which is a weird detail. He must have picked up like a tooth hygiene routine. Maybe you saw those TikTok ads where it's like the purple toothpaste. Anyway, no, purple's my color, I'll take the purple toothpaste. Also, he sharpened his teeth, compensating for something. He also lost some weight too, potentially, which good on him. I mean, is that Ozempic? Is he on Ozempic? Up to this point in the franchise, there's been kind of a trend going on with Scott Cawthon's modeling techniques, specifically regarding his withering, and even more specifically, how not good it is. Because look at this. Look at these weird blocky patches and tell me that it doesn't look like this was modeled in Roblox. I'm just saying. And then there's that awful skull bone tissue model that's hidden underneath his mask. Like, ugh. Just, ugh. Not in like a, ooh, that's scary. Oh, that's uncanny. Like a ew, oh. How could you do that? I mean, I'll give Scott one thing, and it's that this is the epitome of British face structure. Basically, what I'm saying is that between these two designs, one looks like a menacing evil rabbit that once was used to lure kids into the back room to murder them. And then the other kind of just makes me feel bad when I look at it.
What kind of dog is that?
Now this is where the video starts to get potentially pretty controversial. I do not like Molten Freddy's design at all. It's just hard to read, if that makes any sense. Just take a look at this jump scare from Ultimate Custom Night and tell me if you can tell what's going on here. It's probably ruining the bitrate. It's just a bunch of ugh with a mask on it. And that's what Ennard was, but Ennard was cool. And what are these, by the way? What are these things that are coming out of his shoulders here? Are they like marionette strings? Is it lore? I also don't like the color palette. It's just ugly. Blech. Like, I get that it's not supposed to be visually appealing, if anything. I mean, it's just spaghetti, but it's still just too much. Now, I'll admit, I might be straying a little bit too far into the subjective of everything. There's no proof being shown here. It's just me saying stuff. I just think it's gross, though. I don't like it. However, bonus points for the snatched waist. La la. Now sure, I only talked about the character designs for the main enemies of the game, but in reality, there are heaps and heaps of other characters that are hidden in the Tycoon sections of the game. But the truth is, the less that I have to look at Happy Frog, the less likely someone is to be hurt. And I don't want to hurt anybody today. But if you really want me to talk about the rest of them, then fine. Here's the trash in the game. They're fine. I mean, I get that they're meant to be like funny and joke designs, which they are. I mean, they were pretty funny when I scrolled past them in the game, but I don't know if I can actually judge these as character designs because they're actual garbage. And I don't mean that in a mean way. It's a trash can for real. Put me in there. Put me in the trash can. Yeah. The mediocre melodies are fine. I mean, kind of cool sometimes. Less cool other times. All in all, I'd say they're pretty mediocre.
It hurts so much. Every day I ask God why, but I'm only met with more suffering.
Funtime Chica is weirdly the only Chica design that doesn't make me horny, and because of that, it gets points off. Sorry. And then the Rockstars I kind of just dislike for no real reason. I mean, here's the worst Foxy design in the entire game franchise. Sorry. The parrot doesn't save it for me either. Rockstar Bonnie kind of fucks though. She says slurs, and then he's just alright. Cool. All done. And no, I'm not talking about Egg Baby!
Okay. Now for the meat and potatoes of this video. I go too far for this one. This one too much. This is meat and potatoes, by the way. This is for okay, so I don't want you to question what's on the meat.
Now, everything before this point in the video was fairly inconsequential. I mean, I can move past bad character designs and help wanted, but that's because there's good gameplay. And good gameplay is a big redeeming factor in games, which hence the name games. So obviously gameplay is a huge redeeming quality in any game, but this isn't prevalent in Pizza Sim. Allow me to explain. Okay, the dislike button can wait. I have a knife! Oh. Hey there. I'm on the floor now. The Tycoon part of Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator was the only advertised part, kind of the game, and it was surprisingly well fleshed out. Initially, I remember playing the game and then being epically trolled into thinking that, you know, this was some garbage RPG Tycoon, and then I'm like, oh my god, it's FNAF 6, and then the game's like, nope, still a Tycoon. The Tycoon part's kind of exactly what you'd expect a FNAF Tycoon to be, with fun, satisfying minigames and a very realistic portrayal of how easy it is to climb the corporate ladder. The Tycoon itself, however, is kind of a lot for somebody to take in all at once. Or maybe I'm just stupid. This is a possibility. Now, I'm not gonna lie, the Tycoon part of this game, there's not many criticisms that I have for it. The only things being the fact that it kind of lacks any consequences or connection from the rest of the gameplay. You can put yourself at risk of lawsuits and even bankruptcy if you go ahead and just purchase marked down items like it's cheesecake. That's not the same. But rarely have I ever seen anybody actually fall victim to this, even when they likely should have. The lawsuits themselves are fairly inconsequential and would take a real bozo to actually lead to debt. But at the end of the day, I can't really criticize this section too much because it's not meant to be taken seriously. It's meant to be taken as a fun, stupid, gay old time. And I use gay in number one, the way that they used it back in the 1930s, and number two, in a woke way. And yes, it's effective in doing what it sets out to do, giving the player a stupid fun time, but it kind of brings the rest of the already boring game down. The Tycoon section being so fun, goofy, and lighthearted makes the Office and Salvage sections feel like legit work. And not in an immersive way, but more of like a begrudgingly clocking into your McDonald's night shift kind of way. Like, I really don't want to do this. I just want to go home. So yeah, overall, Tycoon good, everything else, icky ew.
Before you is an animatronic found in the back alley. We are unsure of its origins. It is your job to complete the maintenance checklist before claiming it as salvage.
You trying to get flirty, or? Because it's working. So if you haven't already guessed, this is about the salvage sections. I don't know what gave it away. The salvage sections of Pizza Sim are like the equivalent of clocking out from a shift from hell, and then just to find out that your German Shepherd shit all over the walls again? How does this keep happening? Now, these sections are pretty straightforward on paper. After every shift, you go ahead and have the opportunity to salvage an animatronic for spare parts. Now, of course, with everything in this game, this comes with the risk of being mauled by a bear of excessive size. Now, of course, this is a risk that everybody faces every day. I mean, think about it. How sure are you really that there isn't a bear in your house right now? How sure are you really? Have you checked? Would you even know how to check? Is it behind you? The salvage section consists of playing numerous audio prompts on this cassette tape that was provided to you by someone, and seeing if the animatronic reacts to it. This includes sudden yet subtle movements, and if they move too much, you've got to give them a zappy zap. It's a kink, probably. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Or so I thought! What if I told you that there was another way that the animatronics could kill you in this section? People who have no idea what the game is or what it's about are probably saying,
I'm just believing what you say, so I wouldn't really be surprised.
And keep at it. I like when people listen to me. But people who actually know the game might be surprised, because I was. Then again, I am very stupid, so you know what, that might be a factor, but don't look into it too much. Turns out that each animatronic has a unique sound effect that plays during the salvage parts. That means, hey, If you hear this, you're about to get an ass eaten. So why didn't I and possibly many other people not know about this? Oh, that's right. It's probably something to do with the fact that these sound effects that you have to listen to, or else you'll die if you don't hear them, oh, they're just ambient noise. That's right, you're not listening for squeaks, cracks, and, you know, loud animatronic movement noises, nor are you listening for Scrap Baby to let out a queef or two. No, just ambient noise. And this doesn't bode well for you because the office ambience itself, mixed with the ear-piercing audio prompts that you have to play in order to proceed, makes it incredibly hard to actually listen for any abnormal sound cues. Five Nights 4 uses sound cues very heavily as a means of survival, but it does so in a way that makes sense because the ambient noise in that game is distinctively different than the noise you're listening for, which is the breathing at your door. Also, it's utilized differently and better in this scenario because if you happen to miss this sound cue and die because of it, guess what? You get to retry the night. Congratulations. You can jump back into it now knowing what you're listening for and how different it sounds and how long you have to wait to hear it, blah, blah, blah.
This isn't true in FNAF 6.
In FNAF 6's Salvage section, if you miss the sound cue that plays, well, it's too bad for you because the animatronic will lunge at you and eat you out, which is the same outcome as if you successfully salvage the animatronic, minus the ass eating, of course. Oh, and guess what? Now that you know how you're supposed to beat this section and what sound cues to listen to, you don't get to retry. Just by the way, the next time you get to salvage someone is a different animatronic with a different sound cue that you have to recognize on the spot. And what I don't understand is why they don't just kill you in this scenario. They very well could. Don't get why not. Maybe they're just feeling quirky, maybe a little lonely. I get it. I get it. Maybe what happened is that when developing this, Scout realized that, hey, this would be a little bit unfair just because it's like so easy to lose in this section. And if that's the case, then maybe don't make it unfair. Here, I'm about to play a sound effect for you. What you're about to hear is the ambient noise for the salvage section, and randomly, I'm gonna splice in Lefty's sound cue that's supposed to tell the player, hey, your booty hole, not safe.
Document results.
Did you catch it? Maybe you thought you did, but you're not so sure. I'm gonna go ahead and play the sound effect on its own. Just the sound effect of Lefty's aggression. No ambience or anything distracting you. Now you may be beginning to understand my problem here. Maybe if I replayed the first example for you again, you'd be able to pinpoint it now, but that's only because you were able to hear it beforehand. That's not an opportunity that you get in the game. The game gives you the ability to pause the cassette tape in order to focus in more on the sounds that are happening, but this isn't any help because the animatronic can still attack you at this time, and the longer you take to finish it means the more zappy zaps you're gonna have to use, which makes it so you'll lose monetary value after 3 zaps. And it's like at that point, either just zap after every single prompt or die, or I guess not die, just get a little bit of a wrestle. I just like to think that they like get on top of you, they're like, rah! And they run away. A widely accepted strat adapted by actual smart people is one of doing 3 equally distanced shocks. And it's pretty reliable, but it's also not what the game tells you to do. Then again, I don't think you're really experiencing these games correctly if you don't have to look up at least one DJ Sturf tutorial. Can we make him canon? Can DJ Sturf be canon? A fairly insignificant sequence with inconsequential outcomes. Sure, you need to salvage every animatronic to get the best ending, but you can still fail the salvage. People don't really tell you about that. You just don't throw it in the back alley. It's really that simple. It's just one button press. Cool concept, but unfortunate execution. And you can trust my judgment. I've developed 0 games before, so. The Office gameplay is a staple of any FNAF game, so I think it's pretty fair to put a lot of pressure on it being effective. And spoiler alert, I don't think it is. I know. It's okay. How will the world move on is what you're thinking. I get it. But we can get through this. I can sense a bit of resentment from you, or at least some of you out there, so let's start with an example. FNAF 1 had a repetition of gameplay that worked because there was more than one mechanic at hand, and there was also a finite amount of time that would pass before you complete your shift. And with Pizza Sim, the only mechanics that are introduced to you are turning off your equipment to reduce noise and looking into the air ducts beside you. Sure, there's also the motion detector, the audio lure, and the silent ventilation system, and most of which seem to be pretty pointless besides the audio lure, of course.
The motion detection is good for early on in the game and learning where the animatronics are actually headed. But if you're trying to win the night, I would not go with motion detection. But I wouldn't actually use the silent ventilation.
This is not only ineffective because of the lack of interaction needed from the player, but also because every single enemy in the game uses the same mechanics to defend yourself with. Not a single one strays from this, and this makes things pretty boring pretty quick. Unlike the other games in the franchise, new enemy animatronics being introduced means basically nothing except for the fact that you'll have to turn off your monitor a few times more than you did the last night. In previous entries, like FNAF 1, we see a lack of game mechanics utilized to its fullest extent. You see two of the animatronics approaching from either side of your office, in which you're gonna have to close the door on them, which takes power. Another animatronic that requires you to check the cameras every once in a while, making yourself vulnerable and making yourself use up power. He also requires you to have some fast reaction time in certain events. And then finally, one more animatronic, being Freddy, who's basically just an unstoppable force that'll be heading straight towards your office, and the only thing you can do is slow him down as much as possible. The mechanics for these characters are very simple, but it works out well because of the fact that they conflict with each other in a very interesting way. These characters having different mechanics alongside the fact that they're all introduced throughout different points in the game actually makes each night defined from the last, as opposed to Pizzeria Simulator, where the only difference between each night is just, oh, it's harder and there's more of them now. Great. The fact that every animatronic in this game follows the same game mechanic as the other doesn't only make for repetitive gameplay, but it also makes the later nights unfortunately luck-based. Now, of course, every FNAF game has some level of luck associated with it. This is just an unavoidable fact. But usually when you find yourself in an unlucky situation in these games, there's a way to work around it. It may be very difficult, but there's usually a way out. In Pizza Sim, however, even with the most tried and true strategies discussed among the greats in the fandom like DJ Sturf, it still comes down to RNG sometimes.
And sometimes you're just gonna have the worst luck, and I mean, random number generation, RNG, random events, stuff's gonna happen. At some point you probably run into a scenario in which you can't really win. If you don't get jump scared, that's good.
And the reason for this is that, especially on the later nights when there's 4 animatronics all at high aggression surrounding you in this small ventilation system, there will be instances where you have an animatronic on either side of you at the same exact time. Now, the best way to defend yourself in this game is to turn off all of your equipment, such as your computer and your fan, and stare into one of the 2 vents that you hear the animatronic climbing through. The problem that arises with this being your only defense in this game is that when there's an animatronic on either side of you, your options are to either, number 1, take your chances and commit to one of the 2 vents in hopes that that animatronic leaves before the other one kills you, or number 2, attempt to give both of the animatronics an epileptic seizure, which only works some of the time because they are animatronics and not human beings. Now, the office gameplay loop in this game is comparable to FNAF 4's gameplay loop, as they're both heavily reliant on sound cues. FNAF 4, however, makes a more noteworthy attempt at making this mechanic interesting. While the main mechanic is the sound cues, there's still a lot more going on. Like, the animatronics walking up to your doors distracts you from checking on the Freddys, which distracts you then from checking on Foxy inside of the closet. Basically, this game is just FNAF 4, but only the 2 doors. Because in Pizza Sim, when an animatronic crawls into one of your vents, that distracts you from whatever you're doing on your monitor, which isn't really a big deal because there's no pressure on doing anything in a timely manner here. And one of the more gripping and reoccurring gameplay aspects of FNAF games is the tense, down-to-the-wire moments of just barely making it through the night. You know what I'm talking about. Just barely holding off the animatronics and managing your resources just well enough to reach 6 AM. But this is completely rid of in FNAF 6. We all know how good it feels when you finally reach 6 AM after running out of power in FNAF 1 or staring down Springtrap in FNAF 3. While seemingly minuscule, this payoff makes the absence of timed nights in FNAF 6 much more vital. And sure, I'll admit that there's still tense moments in this game. I'm not saying that this game is completely absent of any horror. In fact, I'll even go as far as saying that the office gameplay in this game is extremely effective in making the player feel stress. But I almost think it's to a fault. Now, of course, any FNAF game has the ultimate goal of making the player feel stressed while playing it, as that's part of the thrill of it all. But in FNAF 6's office section, there's only stress.
no reward. I've been asking myself the question while making this video, can something be too scary to the point where it becomes entirely unenjoyable, even for horror fans? And I ask this because I found that the amount of stress in the office section outweighs every other emotion felt, to the point where it makes for a level of dread that just makes me go, I just don't wanna. Now, the horror genre as a whole is pretty subjective, just like comedy. But even then, people don't find my videos funny, so what's up with that? Everyone has a different reaction to horror, and specifically different types of horror, so you could definitely just chalk it down to the fact that this is just a me problem and I need to get over myself. While I would agree with that last bit, I will say in rebuttal that I find FNAF 4 and Help Wanted both far scarier games than FNAF 6 is, but still, I go out of my way to play them for fun. So, what's missing in FNAF 6? Well, when I get jump scared in Help Wanted, it's usually because of the fact that it's entirely my fault. The lack of control over your fate in Pizza Sim, in certain scenarios at least, makes for a far less enjoyable experience. Like, look, I already don't want to be here, okay? Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Also, Help Wanted is just simply fun, which is an essential part of any horror media to be effective. No one truly wants to experience horror media just to get scared and to feel unpleasant. Usually there's something enticing to be offered. That is, of course, unless you are a masochist. Which would explain a lot, actually. So, I said it all. Pizza Sim is far too full of unfun and poorly thought out game design, unattractive visuals, and this to be enjoyable.
I've had some time to reflect. And in that time, I realized that it's difficult to criticize this game too hard when you have the context that Scott Cawthon sat down and crafted this entire game for me, for you, as well as the entire Five Nights at Freddy's community. If a nice Christian Texan man walked up to you and said, "Here, take this casserole, homeless man. I made it just for you." Despite the fact that the casserole might not be the most flavorful thing in the world, nor are you a homeless man, you'll still appreciate it, won't you? You'd still look that well-intentioned man in the eyes and say, "Thank you." Right? I'd like to think that I would. But if that's the case, then why did I just spend half an hour talking so poorly about this casserole of a game, analyzing all of its flaws? Am I really deserving of such generosity from Scott Cawthon? Especially when you take into account the fact that this game is free to play, there are definitely some silver linings. The soundtrack of this game is certainly one of the best of the franchise, and the story hits higher highs than we've ever seen, and lest we forget Candy Cadet. Candy. Sure, maybe this casserole is filled with ingredients unidentifiable to most people that are not in the FBI, but hey, at least there's cheese on top, right? And hey, the cheese is nicely broiled too, so it must be my lucky day. And hey, if I ultimately decide that I'd rather not consume the glue consistency slop with cheese on top, I still have many other tried and true options, like the bread and butter, or the steak and fries, the chicken noodle soup, the tiramisu, or just a glass of milk for some reason, but that's fine because milk is a perfectly fine beverage. I can do that on my own accord without whining and complaining about the casserole that I consciously chose to eat, because maybe it's not my thing, but maybe it's someone else's. But in doing that, I receive less YouTube ad revenue, so I'm gonna stick to doing this.
Holy crap! Thanks for watching!
Was that good? Was that too much? Did I do too much there? This is my first video of this kind, so I hope it was, like, at least fine. Let me know in the comments below what you thought about it. I think I'll probably sprinkle in a few of these videos on my channel every once in a while, so be sure to subscribe to make sure you keep up on my very, very important opinions. Also, apologies for how long this took. I've been very busy with real-life stuff, but I'm getting back into the flow of things, and I promise you you'll get some good content in the coming weeks, so keep an eye out for that.